Hi there. My name is Mike Snow, and I wanted to talk about a TV series I saw recently called Dark. It was released in 2017 on Netflix, and I heard about it because of the Vlog Lady on a YouTube channel. I'm going to link her video about Dark below. I really like her channel. She talks about a lot of TV shows, including a lot about Twin Peaks, and I think you should check it out if you haven't already. But anyway, I heard about this series because of her, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a 10 episode series. This was made in Germany, and it was a really fun supernatural mystery. And I am going to be spoiling things about it, so if you haven't seen it, just so you know that. The story is about a small rural German town called Winden and a series of disappearances of children in that town. A group of high school kids in the first episode go into the woods near a mysterious cave next to a nuclear power plant in the town, and one of the youngest kids there, an 11-year-old boy named Mikkel, or Mikkel, it's kind of a strange name, goes missing, and they sort of have to figure out what the heck happened to him, especially because shortly after Mikkel disappears, another boy named Mads reappears, who disappeared 33 years earlier. And he looks like he has not aged a single day, and he is dead and horribly mutilated. And they have to figure out how exactly these kids are going missing, who is doing it, and what is the purpose of it all. And I think the show does a great job of building suspense and atmosphere. The characters are all very interesting. The acting is excellent all around. All the characters are played very well. It's very, very sophisticated and well done, and no hammy TV style acting that kind of impedes this sometimes. It's all very well produced. The town itself looks excellent. The cinematography is amazing. It is a very dark show shot through. I mean, it looks like it's shot through like a blue filter a lot of the time. It's raining. It's overcast. Everything kind of looks like a drizzly late fall, early winter day. And I think they did a fantastic job with all of that. The mood and the setting, especially in the early episodes, you really feel frightened when these kids go missing because you don't know how many are going to go or what's exactly happening to them. But you do know that something hideous is going on with most of them. And I really got hooked with the first few episodes. And that lasted almost to the very end of the series, trying to figure out what was happening. And they introduce a supernatural element pretty early on into the story. And that involves, of all things, time travel. Apparently, some of these kids are being killed in some way in order to test a mysterious time machine that someone is trying to work on. And the time travel element can usually be it's almost always very tricky to pull off in a TV show. It's one of the most dangerous things you can do because it excites people's sense of finding fault in a show. I think normally people are willing to just have the suspension of disbelief and not care, but somehow time travel implies that you want the audience to kind of go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How could he do this in the 1950s and then have that happen in the 1980s? Isn't there some sort of paradox that's going on? And as the story progresses, it really kind of is mostly horror. But as the story goes on, it drifts off into science fiction, and I think kind of towards the end loses a little bit of that horror element. But it's still a fantastic show. The characters are all very sophisticated, I think, at how they're drawn, because there are certain characters that you end up feeling very different about from the beginning of the series to the end of the series based on what they've done from beginning to end, and also based on finding out what they were like in the past. I think the vlog lady mentioned this in her review, but you feel very differently about the same person 33 years later. From going from one time frame to the other. It goes from 1953 to 86 to 2019, which is the present day in the show. And really, in real life, it makes sense. You are a very different person just 10 years apart from who you are. 10 years later, there may be some continuities and similarities in how you act and behave, but you know so much, you've experienced so much. You are just a totally different human being, usually, in between those time frames. So it's hard to see them as the same character sometimes when they're 33 years older. One of the villainous people who does some of these horrible things 33 years on has dementia, and he's an old man, he seems pathetic, and it's hard to judge him. And someone may seem like an interesting, upright police officer in one, and then 33 years later he's kind of a pathetic, obnoxious drunk. And one of the main characters, Ulrich Nielsen, Mikkel Nielsen's father, he starts out in the 80s as kind of an obnoxious jerk and kind of a punk, but then 33 years later he's a police officer and so sober, normal, everyday guy. And the characters, just in general, I really liked how you didn't get one feeling for them. They behaved in some ways good, in some ways bad. Only a couple of them were just truly horrible or good. They're leading sort of gray lives usually, and you can take a look back into their past and find out why they are acting one way or the other. And I think that's really interesting to go back and see the origin point of why everyone is behaving in the way that they are now. There were some problems that I had with the series. I mean, it's not perfect. Almost nothing is perfect. But I think that the series is an ensemble cast, and it is really an ensemble piece. Because even in something like Twin Peaks or Angel or Babylon 5 or something like that, where there really is a plethora of people to choose from and follow, there was still identifiably a main character. This one person here is still in charge ultimately, and the person that we see things from the perspective of. But in this one, I think it was a little bit too much of an ensemble piece because we spend roughly equal amounts of time with large numbers of characters. There's really, we get introduced to one character named Jonas Convald in the beginning, and he's kind of sort of the main character, but we spend, long stretches of episode with other characters, seeing it through their perspective, for the police, the chief of police woman, Ulrich, Mad's father, his wife, Katerina. We spend Bartaj, Jonas's friend, and we really don't get the sense in a traditional story of seeing things from one person's look on everything. Even in Lost, which was kind of the ultimate show of an ensemble cast, it was generally considered that Matthew Shepard's character was the main guy, the main person we're seeing things from. Although, because there were so many characters, I kind of felt like I couldn't keep track of them all. In fact, I was going to write down before I did this video, look at all the names of all the people. I remember some of them, Ulrich, Jonas, Katerina, Claudia, a few others, Noah. But it took me a long time just to, put the name to the faces. And I decided that no, I'm not going to, study up on the names. I'm just going to give you the fact that I don't necessarily know everyone's name, even after watching the whole series. It feels like something I would have to watch multiple times. And I think it would probably have benefited if we just had gone through from one or two characters' perspective, a little bit more like the small coterie of people in Stranger Things. And this is a little bit similar to Stranger Things, so if you like that show, you'll probably enjoy this as well. As the series went on, I've kind of found it more and more difficult to get invested in the story because a lot of it involves this is German, remember, Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. Sort of the idea that we're doomed or cursed to live out and repeat everything that has ever been done over and over again in an endless cycle. So it kind of feels like, well, can we really care about what's going to happen if anything can be changed? Because I don't know if anything was deliberately changed by someone using this time travel nonsense going on. I don't know if it's just they're living, throughout the first season, they used the time travel to try to change the present, but ended up simply enacting all of the things that would bring about what went on. If they can't actually affect anything and they're just dancing around, living their lives completely without any free will, how can we necessarily care about what's going to happen? And speaking of investment, I found it very difficult to determine exactly what was going on and what people wanted to do because the mysterious nature of everything kept everything until the very last second kind of hidden. And we get tiny little dribs and drabs of information. And I know that there's at least one guy that's clearly doing something evil, but why exactly he's doing any of this is very unclear. And why exactly anyone might be opposing him is also, what their motives are, is also very unclear. So I couldn't really get any sense of, in some ways it's more sophisticated because it's not a black and white, good and bad kind of thing, but also it's sort of difficult to care then because it's a little bit more like the morally gray middle zone of life, where it's hard to get really invested about what the characters are doing, especially when you have to keep your head straight about three different timelines in the 1950s, 80s, and the present day, and trying to figure out exactly what's going on and why people want to do anything. It's all very, it's kind of flustering trying to figure out what exactly is going on. It wasn't until the very last episode, the last 60 seconds of the last episode, that I realized something. I had this niggling sense in the back of my mind that I had seen this before, this series, and I thought, well, it just came out a few weeks ago. How could you have seen it? And I realized in the last episode I had seen this before in a way. It's Time Chasers.
I don't know.
Where are we?
Well, it says September 25th, 2041.
But we were here. It doesn't look like that.
My God. There's something very wrong here.
There's no food courts.
Looks like there was a war.
You'll have to take my word for it. We can't afford to show it.
Now, if you don't know what Time Chasers is, it was a terrible B-movie released straight to video in 1994, I believe, made in Vermont by a group of indie film producers. And it is a hysterically bad film. And it was on the famous Mystery Science Theater 3000 television show back then, where they would find B-movies and riff on them. And this movie is just unbelievably bad. And it is hilarious. And it's dark. It's the show Dark. It's about someone who invents a time machine, uses the time machine to go backwards and forwards in time, sells the time machine to an evil corporation. The corporation turns the future into a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and so this guy has to use the time machine in the present day to go back into the past to stop himself from giving the time machine to the corporation and turning the future evil.
Into the future. It's a wasteland. In the future, the world's in anarchy because of its use as a weapon.
Is not.
The transport.
When you affect history, you affect the future. It causes a tangent.
Right.
It skews the future.
It's the exact, it's not the exact same story, obviously, because I don't want to diminish Dark in any way, but please, this might be on YouTube, the MST3K Time Chasers. It's hilarious, and it is this story. That's exactly what's going on here, because in the very last episode, we get a new piece of information that they'd hinted at before, that some of the people in the future, in 33 years past the present day Winden, are in some sort of creepy Mad Max-esque wasteland where something horrifying has happened, maybe involving the nuclear reactor. And they apparently know about time travel in the future, or they probably do. And they have to go back into the past to solve what's going on, or, prevent things from happening in the future. So it's weird to note that this incredibly bad B-movie has actually been, in a way, ripped off. And they've taken this incredibly terrible film, but took the interesting kernel of the idea and made it into Dark. Now, it's not exactly the same, like the skeletal structure is very, similar. On the anthropological level, you could say that they have the same bone structure, but everything else is different. This is a sophisticated, intelligent television show, but this one in the past is, Time Chasers is a very unique experience, and I would recommend it if you like B-movies. But anyway, to sum everything up, I think the show is actually very, very good, despite my criticisms that I think it might be turning into a kind of Lost situation. Lost and Fringe were two shows that I also really liked, but suffered from the identical problem of too many mysteries and not enough solving of the mystery. I think at some point you have to just come down and face facts and solve the mystery and then lead us into another one. But Dark, just like those other two shows, they just they don't solve any mysteries so much as they increase all of the riddles. They give you one riddle, then they give you another riddle as an answer to that riddle, and nothing ever gets solved. But despite all my criticism of the show, I still want to make it clear that I still loved the show. I was really invested in it. I think that emotionally it worked really well, and I was really feeling the things that these characters were going through, and it felt like an intelligent, well-made story with interesting characters, well acted. I liked all of the characters in the story. I mean, not like them, some of them were horribly evil, but they were all interesting and all worthwhile. And I loved the kind of very soap opera-y kind of relationship dramas that were going on where people were cheating on everybody else and marriages were breaking up and there were ancient things in the past that they were going into from decades ago. And I thought that was all amazing. It was shot beautifully. I think overall, despite the fact that it is Time Chasers, this was an excellent series, and I really, really hope that it gets a second series. And I hope that more people on YouTube talk about it so it gets that second series. I hope they clean things up a little bit. They just need to trim a few things out, put a few things in, and my criticisms are gone. They're pretty minor to begin with. I really enjoyed it, and I think I'm going to watch it again. It's the use of music in the series is very good. I really liked the music and the way it was done. Overall, it was excellent. I really want you to check it out. Tell me in the comments if you liked the series, if you've seen it, what you thought of my criticisms of it, if you absolutely loved it, if you despised it, if I've piqued your interest and you may check it out because of this. And do you want a second season? Do you think it's going to go somewhere, or do you think that it's going to just kind of collapse? And please tell me if you check out Time Chasers and if I'm right or if I'm crazy, because this movie, it's Time Chasers, isn't it? Right? With the going to the past to stop the future giving up the apocalypse. And anyway, my name is Michael. Please subscribe if you like my content. I'm going to be doing more of these videos talking about TV shows. If you in the comments tell me that you want to see more of that, because there are a bunch of shows that I have not really seen, especially on Netflix, that I could check out. So if you like that content, please tell me below. Please like this video if you liked it. And have a good day.